Imagine waking up where the air is thin, the roads nearly disappear, and some of Earth's highest mountains are right outside your door. Today, we're traveling to some of the highest villages on Earth, where people have built entire lives at altitudes that leave most visitors struggling for breath. Up here, altitude changes everything, from farming and transportation to something as simple as walking home. Some of these communities stand thousands of meters above sea level, surrounded by landscapes that seem almost too extreme for permanent human life. The views are spectacular, but carrying groceries uphill at this altitude probably isn't anyone's idea of a relaxing afternoon. Yet generations have adapted to these conditions, creating communities shaped by isolation, resilience, and the higher we climb, the stranger life becomes, because one of today's villages sits in a landscape that looks almost like another planet. But this is only the beginning. As we climb higher, we'll discover communities surviving in places where altitude transforms almost every. Our journey begins in Kibber, a Himalayan village standing more than 4,000 meters above sea level in India's remote Spiti Valley. At this elevation, oxygen is scarce, winters are severe, and the surrounding mountains can make the outside world feel incredibly far away. But for the people who call Kibber home, these extreme conditions aren't an adventure. They're simply everyday life. A short growing season means every patch of workable land matters, forcing local families to adapt farming to one of Earth's harshest environments. Up here, traffic jams look a little different, and the animals usually have the right of way. From above, Kibber becomes a tiny patch of human life surrounded by a landscape powerful enough to make almost everything else seem insignificant. When the sun disappears behind the mountains, temperatures fall quickly, and the village settles into the silence of the high Himalayas. Kibber is remarkable, but we're only getting higher. Our next stop takes us deeper into the mountains, where isolation and altitude become. Higher in Spiti Valley lies Komic, a tiny Himalayan settlement where life unfolds more than 4,000 meters above the sea. At this altitude, the landscape feels enormous and almost empty, while the village itself appears like a small island. There are no crowded streets here. Daily life moves slowly, shaped by altitude, weather, and the immense distances. Growing food this high is never simple. Cold temperatures and a short farming season turn every successful harvest into something worth protecting. Even walking uphill can remind visitors just how thin the air is here. The locals, meanwhile, make it look suspiciously easy. What looks harsh from the outside has supported generations of people who learned to work with the mountains rather than against them. After sunset, the temperature drops quickly, and one of the highest inhabited landscapes on Earth becomes remarkably quiet. But altitude has another surprise waiting for us. Farther across the mountains, people have created communities. Deeper in the Himalayas, Tashigang takes high-altitude living to another level, with a tiny community surrounded almost entirely by mountains. Here, distance is measured not only in kilometers, but in steep roads, changing weather, and mountain passes separating residents. From above, Kibber becomes a tiny patch of human life surrounded by a landscape powerful enough to make almost everything else seem insignificant. Even getting home can feel like an expedition. And this is definitely not the road where you want to realize you forgot the groceries. Supplies, food, and fuel become especially important when winter weather can make an already remote settlement even harder to reach. Yet isolation also gives Tashigang something increasingly rare, a silence so complete that the mountains seem to fill the entire world. In an environment this demanding, community matters. Neighbors aren't simply nearby. They can become essential when wedded. And we're not finished climbing. Our journey now leaves this tiny Himalayan settlement behind us. Our next stop is Karzok, a remote Himalayan village standing more than 4,500 meters above sea level. The setting looks peaceful, but this beautiful lake lies within an environment where thin air, freezing temperatures, and isolation. For the families living here, adaptation isn't temporary. Generations have learned how to build homes, raise animals, and livestock remain deeply connected to life across this high plateau, where grazing animals can turn sparse mountain vegetation. Visitors may stop every few steps to catch their breath. Locals seem far more concerned with simply getting on with their day. Seen from above, Karzok is almost swallowed by its surroundings. A tiny human settlement inside one of Asia's most... As evening arrives, the mountains turn gold and the lake becomes a mirror, briefly transforming this harsh environment into something almost unreal. But our journey still has farther to climb. Beyond these mountains lies another remarkable community, where far across Ladakh's high plateau lies Hanle, a remote Himalayan community surrounded by mountains. The landscape is vast enough to make houses, roads, and even entire settlements appear almost insignificant from the air. Life here depends on preparation, cooperation, and generations of knowledge about surviving in a cold, dry environment far from major cities. Animals remain an important part of life across these high valleys, helping communities make use of land where conventional farming can be extremely difficult. The monastery has one advantage over almost everything else in the valley. The view from up here is very difficult to beat. When darkness arrives, Hanle reveals another treasure: exceptionally clear night skies far removed from the bright lights of large cities. Those dark skies are so valuable for astronomy that scientists operate a major observatory here. Hanle shows how isolation can become an advantage. But ahead, we'll meet another mountain community where simply reaching home can become an adventure of its own. Back in Spiti Valley, the tiny settlement of Gette sits high above the surrounding landscape, where only a handful of homes interrupt. From the valley below, reaching a settlement like this means climbing into a completely different world of thin air, cold winds, and there are few distractions here. Home, family, livestock, and the changing mountain weather define the rhythm of everyday life. Living this far from large towns means families have learned to depend on local resources and on one another whenever conditions become difficult. The neighborhood is quiet, the scenery is spectacular, and rush hour traffic is unlikely to become a serious problem anytime soon. From this height, the settlement almost disappears into the landscape, revealing just how small human life can appear against the scale of the Himalayas. Yet when evening light reaches these mountains, isolation becomes something beautiful, a silence and sense of space. And our climb continues. Ahead lies another extraordinary village where altitude, isolation, and century. Not far away, Chicham reveals another side of high-altitude life. A small Himalayan community surrounded by mountains and enormous gorges. Today, a dramatic bridge helps connect this remote community, crossing a gorge that once made travel between neighboring areas far more difficult. Inside the village, life feels surprisingly calm, despite a landscape that constantly reminds you how remote this place really is. Families have adapted farming and livestock traditions to a short growing season, cold nights, and the limited resources of the high mountains. The scenery is incredible, although anyone afraid of heights may prefer to enjoy this particular view from a very safe distance. From above, Chicham shows the remarkable balance between human settlement and a landscape that still feels overwhelmingly wild. For visitors, this may look like the edge of the world. For the families who live here, it's simply home. But the mountains still have more surprises waiting. Our next destination takes high-altitude living into an even more extraordinary landscape. Our journey now reaches Langza, another extraordinary Spiti village where a small community lives beneath some of the Himalayas' most dramatic peaks. Watching over the valley, Langza's great Buddha statue has become an unforgettable symbol of the village and its deep connection to Buddhist culture. Beneath these enormous mountains, daily life remains remarkably simple. But Langza hides something unexpected beneath your feet. Marine fossils, reminders that rocks farming at this altitude demands patience. A short growing season means every warm day becomes valuable before winter returns. The nearest skyscrapers may be hundreds of kilometers away, but with mountains like these, nobody here is missing the skyline. As evening settles over Langza, golden light transforms the valley and reveals why these harsh mountains can still feel deeply peaceful. We've climbed through some extraordinary Himalayan communities, but our journey isn't over yet. Our next stop is Hikkim, another tiny Spiti community where everyday life unfolds more than 4,000 meters above sea level. From above, Hikkim looks almost impossibly small, surrounded by mountains that stretch far beyond the village in every direction. There are no crowded avenues here, just narrow paths, traditional homes, and a community adapted to one of India's most demanding environments. Hikkim became famous for something surprisingly ordinary: a tiny post office allowing travelers and residents to sending a postcard from here is easy. Explaining to your friends how the mail traveled down from the Himalayas might take a little longer. Beyond its unusual post office, survival still depends on familiar mountain traditions. Farming. As daylight fades, Hikkim becomes remarkably quiet, leaving only scattered homes beneath an enormous Himalayan sky. We've seen how people survive at extraordinary heights, but our journey still has one final chapter, where the scale of high altitude. For our final high-altitude village, we travel to Demul, a remote Himalayan community surrounded by an immense landscape of mountains and sky. From the air, Demul appears almost impossibly small, a fragile patch of human life surrounded by a landscape that seems to continue forever. But inside these narrow lanes, the village is alive with families whose routines have been shaped by altitude for generations. Here, survival depends on using a short summer carefully, raising livestock and preparing before winter transforms the mountains once again. What visitors call extreme altitude, the people here simply call home. And that may be the most remarkable part of this entire journey. Across these extraordinary communities, altitude changes the climate, the journey, work. And if you enjoy discovering extraordinary places and the people who call them home, subscribe to WorldCipher Studio and continue explores. And if you thought living this high was incredible, our next journey goes somewhere even more surreal, into villages that